I'm Aubrey, and this is David, and we are with Cedar, childoftheredwoods.com. And today we're here to talk about kind of an impromptu topic. Something just popped up on the internet last week, and we were surprised and wanted to talk about it.
Now, I'm sure the imagination runs wild when we say something popped up on the internet and we were shocked. No, this actually is a positive thing. It was Google had a doodle for our Teacher Appreciation Day. Really wonderful and worthy cause, and it made us
for teachers.
But it really got us to thinking about kind of what teaching means and what it looks like. So actually, I want to show you the doodle, and would you describe it?
Yes. Okay, you're going to bring that up on your computer.
This is a high-tech, low-tech.
Okay, so when Google came out with this doodle, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, yay, teachers need to be celebrated. And my second was surprise and confusion, because as you see here, this is the teacher figure. I mean, obviously, glasses and a pointer, a big board back there with lots of complicated looking equations. And then look down here, these little guys. You've got lots of little students here, and what do you notice? They all look attentive, right? And happy. And they're carrying little books, which, as we all know, are very important for students. And the teacher is pretty happy with himself here. Looks a little bit self-important. Holding open a book, kind of going on and on about something, right? So that is what the doodle looked like. Now my reaction, is like, well, great. Teachers do need to be celebrated. But then I was like, wait a minute. As a teacher myself, I was like, wait. This doesn't really represent who I see myself as a teacher. And we also have an education background. We're teachers together.
Teacher, yeah, that's right. And the issue that for me was that it was so obviously meant to be a teacher, not just because it was for Teacher Appreciation Day or whatever. You could click to go to the link, but the imagery itself, the large pontificator with a pointer, and the small little empty vessels being filled. It's such a classic stereotypical image, and it's not Google's fault. This isn't something that Google did wrong.
It's the stereotype of the teacher. This is what we think of when we think of teacher and classroom. We think of little beings with the eyes just fixated on the larger, more important, and more educated figure.
That's right. So the issue, it's good intentions, but the wrong image. And what it really says is, it says something about how people imagine classrooms, how people imagine schools and teachers.
Right.
And the way that they imagine isn't necessarily the way we want them to, because it's a very teacher-centered approach. It's not a student-centered approach, which is what we would really want to see, student-centered learning.
And we don't think that this is necessarily Google's fault, for creating this vision of teachers. It's out there already in our culture. This is how people see teachers and students already.
So when we talk about a student-centered classroom, what does that mean? We've used the term, you might have heard it before, I'm sure you have if you're a teacher. What does student-centered learning mean or look like?
So I can talk about it from early childhood and elementary point of view. So when I think about student-centered learning, I think about the students themselves coming up with curious ideas about the world and kind of a natural drive to want to learn about all the things that are out there in the world that they haven't encountered yet. And so the role of the teacher wouldn't necessarily to say, okay, you need to know all of these things to the little students. It would be about following their interests, and then helping to kind of guide them in their research. So an example would be a child goes to the pond and sees a turtle. Turtles are everywhere. We adults already know what they are, but to children, it's like a magical, amazing new experience. And so the teacher's role would be then to explore further with the child, ask questions that lead to where turtles live and what they eat and, why their bodies are formed the way they are. We can kind of help, when the child is already motivated to kind of support their learning that way.
That's right. So there's an old cliche about sage on the stage versus guide on the side, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about. And even though it's a bit of a cliche, and we've said it a million times, it actually is true. So to your point, the idea of the turtle lesson isn't like, okay, now we're going to study 20 facts about turtles and you're going to memorize it.
Right.
You have a teachable moment. The
Right.
child became interested in it, and as a teacher, your job is to really kind of see that moment of receptiveness.
Right. It's an opportunity for...
And then grow it to blossom that into something else. And you talked about it as something for... with younger children, you gave an example, but the fact is...
It's kind of easy to see with younger children.
It is.
They're always like, wow, they're so excited naturally about
That's
things.
right. But the reality is it's true for all learners, adult
Right.
learners, older students. I have a belief, or we have a belief, that there's a real innate desire to learn. Humans have an innate desire to learn. And the real challenge or the trick for those of us who are educators is to help sort of get out of the way, to help kind of keep that pathway open. And one of the ways that we can do that best is by really listening to the student and creating that kind of student-centered approach and helping continue to foster that love of learning. And you see that at all ages. So the child who's very young and gets fascinated by turtles is really not that different from the teenager who gets really interested in civics, or the adult who gets really interested in his career or her career. It's the same thing, the kind of the passion to learn and acquire and to explore is just kind of part and parcel of the human experience. And that's really kind of the magic of teaching. And when we get out of the way of that experience and let it happen, when we don't block it by trying to fill people like vessels, the big pontificator, then you can actually have some of that magic happen, and you can see it, and it's amazing. So when we talk about student-centered, we've talked about it for a long time.
So back to the Google Doodle. I wanted to say the second thing that really popped out at me was the way the students were just gazing at the teacher, but not active in the learning.
That's right.
And that's something that didn't come to me right away. My first thought was, like they're all doing what the teacher wants them to do. But my second realization was, what I would really want students to be doing in a classroom is actively learning,
That's
so
right.
I would want to be seeing them engaging and exploring and doing experiments and that
That's right.
sort of thing. So,
Yep.
so instead of just standing there with a book, you might actually see a student looking in a microscope or, reading a book themselves rather than just listening to one read aloud.
That's right. So it's that kind of that active learning. We know that learning really is happening at the application level, not at the, let's say, the rote level. So it's good practice. And what's also important is that when you see this kind of image, or when we imagine the teacher sort of at the center of it, what you're really creating is an authoritarian mindset. So
Right.
the student is relying on authority for knowledge, and what we need to do is create situations where the student feels empowered and the knowledge can come from within.
Yeah.
And not reliant only on authority to have the answers, but to have a belief in him or herself that I can do this, I can learn. And that's vitally important, because without that, you really kind of create people where there's a dependency forever on authority to answer their questions, and it precludes them from really, I think, living a full life and really engaging fully in our society and a democracy.
The problem is in adulthood is if you
That's
don't
right.
believe in yourself and your competence, to explore and find out stuff on your own.
That's right. Yeah, so the greatest, when you think about what really are the great gifts that teachers can give, one of the great gifts that a teacher can give is that kind of confidence to learn and that confidence to engage.
Right.
So this is all well and good. It's nice to talk about student-centered learning, but let's talk about reality, right? Let's talk about the limitations. What are some of the limitations, or why is it so hard to make student-centered learning a reality in the classroom? It's been around a long time. The Socratic method is essentially a student-centered approach. What do you think? Why is it so hard?
Well, when I think about challenges that we face in the classroom, the first thing that really comes to mind for me is that the whole system kind of seems structured around this idea that students need to know certain facts or certain tidbits of knowledge at specific times. Every third grader needs to know their timetables.
That's right.
And it just keeps going from there. You taught history as well, and dates and facts or...
That's right. So, as a high school history teacher, that was kind of part and parcel of the experiences as you march them through the time. And from one perspective, you're like, great, you have a sense of what's happening in the world. But as a teacher, and myself and many of my colleagues, we would look at that and say, getting them through the dates, what is that really doing? How are they really learning? How are they really growing and maturing? And what's the purpose of history? Kind of forcing ourselves to think about those things. Why did we do it? We did it because it was required. It's the standards are spelled out. There's a scope and sequence. We have to cover it. It's been determined that this is a way we're going to measure whether the student has learned.
Right, and when we add those assessments in and we put all the pressure on the teachers
That's
to make
right.
sure that the students are performing well, it kind of forces teachers into more of an authoritarian role.
And it's a natural fit when we look at the history of modern public education. It really did grow from the industrial age and sort of the factory mindset, and that's this kind of the system that we see today with desks in a row that still persists is a reflection of that. Even though other parts of society have changed, the schools have not necessarily changed with it. Even though there's lots and lots and lots of teachers who are really working hard to make student-centered, child-centered learning a reality, there's kind of institutional challenges that make it hard. So we would never say to somebody like, oh, you're not getting it. Like, if you really worked hard, you can make student-centered learning a reality. That's not true. There are just functional realities in the world.
It's hard.
Absolutely. So what do? Well, we have 3 suggestions that kind of can help somebody think through, is this student-centered? Am I kind of working in the right way? And then hopefully finding a balance. And the first one is thinking in yourself, do you know why you're teaching it? Can you explain to yourself why you're teaching it?
Why is it important that the child know this at this time? And if you can't answer that, then the whole thing falls apart, right?
That's right. So to go back to the turtle example, filling the child with a textbook full of facts and figures about turtles, why? Like,
Why?
What's the purpose of that? Is it so they have an encyclopedic knowledge of turtles that they're going to instantly forget? Is it because you saw a teachable moment like, hey, great, we're going to do this? What is it about the turtle that kind of sparked their interest? It may not have been anything about the facts and figures. It could have been anything else. And so kind of thinking in our own minds, like, why am I doing this, is a starting point, an important starting point.
Right. And the second one, we've talked about why the teacher should know why they're teaching a certain subject or topic. The student also needs to know and understand why it's important for them to learn the topic or the subject. And so then we kind of have talked about like how it's a relationship between the teacher and the student.
That's right.
It should be a partnership between the two, not just the student doing all the work by themselves and the teacher kind of overseeing it and jumping in when necessary, or the teacher doing all the teaching and the student trying to learn everything they can from the teacher. It should be more of a partnership between the two.
That's right.
And both should understand, what the ideals of the other are and the reasons for the learning.
We sometimes call this buy-in. Like, did you buy into the idea? And it's true. Like, if you have an emotional investment in it, you're more receptive. It's why, it can be frustrating sometimes that the kid knows everything about Pokemon and nothing about the times table.
Right.
Why is it? Is it because like one harder than the other? I guarantee it's not.
No.
Like Pokemon, the minutia of it all, it's insane. There's a kind of an innate drive to it that kind of receptiveness is already in there. If we help the kind of see from the student's eyes and ask, does the child understand why it's important to learn this? It can help spark that receptive moment. And then the third piece is, why is the child resistant or open? So thinking about, again, the first one being, why am I teaching it? The second being, does the student understand why he's being or she's being asked to learn it?
Even if those things are both solid,
that's right.
The child still has a choice,
that's right.
And the child is a being,
that's right.
Who has feelings and may or may not want to learn something at that moment.
That's right.
And so that's where kind of the art of teaching comes in, don't you think?
Absolutely. So it's kind of thinking through the idea of what makes the child open at this time or receptive or not. And it could be any number of factors. It could be the child is hungry. It could be that they're burned out. It could be that they need a mental break. It could be that there's a fundamental skill that they lacked that you need to go back and reteach on. Thinking through all those pieces can make that process.
Or that the child had a teacher who was, too hard and not
right.
empathetic enough
That's
in
right.
previous years.
And kind of the joy of learning is gone or something, so or diminished. So kind of thinking through what's causing this resistance, how can we kind of foster that and grow that again, is really critical. So why am I teaching it? Like, is this really important?
Right.
Do they understand why it's important? Can I explain it to myself and to them? Can I teach essentially myself why it's important? Can I teach them why it's important?
Right.
And then looking at it and say, they get it, they're not ready for it right now for some reason. Why is that? Or they're really into this right now. What is it that speaks to them? What is it that's really motivating them to want to learn this? And at the end of the day, what we're really describing is self-discipline. Like
right.
the whole purpose of all of this sort of student-centered approach is to teach self-discipline to the child, to help them really learn the art of lifelong learning and how to create those receptive moments in themselves when it's not necessarily fun. So I remember learning the guitar, practicing, or any instrument really, but let's say learning the guitar. It's not always fun to play scales, or it's not always fun to go through chord progressions. But I, at some point in my life, had learned the discipline to stick with it because I knew that on the other side of that was something really good.
Right.
And so I had kind of learned the love of self-determination and lifelong learning.
As teachers, we know that there's something good
That's
in
right.
the end that is going to happen when the child learns a certain skill. The child might not necessarily know
That's
that
right.
yet. And so it's our job to kind of be cheerleaders in a way and motivators
And in a way, say like sticking to it or grit or whatever you want to call it is important. It's important to do hard things. It's important to kind of stick with stuff even though it's not always fun. So following the child and creating a student-centered environment doesn't mean that like it's willy-nilly. You know, it's chaos. It's Lord of the Flies. That's not what it means at all. What it really means is listening to the child and guiding the child through that experience so that you're getting to the thing together.
right.
And when you do that, you've really you've given the child one of the most important things you possibly could, which is the love of learning and the ability to engage in that for the rest of his or her life.
Yeah, the confidence to go out there and take on any subject and
To be his own or her own authority, to not look just to authority to tell you the answers, but to
Right.
question and judge. It's the backbone of how our democratic process works.
Right.
If we don't have thinking, judging people, it's not going to work. So it's vital to do that as well. So this is really important. And so let's go back to the premise, which was like the doodle was nice, but why did it go wrong? What would we really want to see that doodle instead? So the great big teacher and the little kids, what would you want that doodle to look like?
well, I would want the focus to be more on the student.
Yeah.
And maybe the teacher wouldn't be quite so in your face, maybe diminished a little bit in the background. I would want the students to obviously be engaged and excited and joyful looking, as they're doing their work.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And of course, the image does a nice job of showing the idea of like respect and like, admiration for the teacher. And we all, that does feel
nice,
good.
yeah.
But of course,
I like to be admired.
what we would love to see is maybe all the figures together are the same size, and they're all learning together because we have the concept of a teacher and a student. But in a really healthy classroom or learning environment, whatever that
It's
is,
a community.
it's not one or the other. Sometimes you're the teacher, sometimes you're the student, and it's best when you're both.
Right.
And you're learning together. And the thing that you're learning as the teacher is kind of the discovery process. That's what kind of gets you going. And what the student is getting is that discovery and the challenge. So it's that reciprocity that really makes it fun. That's the joy and beauty of teaching. So
this is where we're going to kind of wrap up.
Yeah.
So thank you for watching.
Yep.
And we just want to send out one big shout out to all of the teachers who have been here watching with us. Thank you for being teachers.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being teachers who take the time to seriously think about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because we need you. And the children need you. And we do want you to know that you were very much appreciated.
Yes, this is our own late Teacher Day appreciation.
Thank you
for your
teachers.
work. And I've been David.
And I'm Aubrey. And
Yep.
we're with childoftheredwoods.com. You can find us there.
Yep. And we'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.